what's going on, y'all? Welcome to this week's midweek moment. I love Thanksgiving. I really do. It's a top three holiday for me, right there between Christmas and Cinco de Mayo. And let's be honest, I love Cinco de Mayo because I love tacos and Mexican food. But anyways, Thanksgiving I think gets a bad rap. I think because of how close it is to Christmas, and it often gets overlooked. People are listening to their Christmas music as soon as Halloween ends, if not before that. And so we kind of miss Thanksgiving often, and I'm guilty of that too. There have been years where like it's the day before, and I go to work. I've gone to work at Trader Joe's, and it's like crazy busy, and I think to myself, well, why is it so busy? It's because it's Thanksgiving. Duh. Anyways, but I love Thanksgiving, and really there are three reasons why I love Thanksgiving. The first one is because of football. When I was in high school and playing football in high school, our goal every year was to win the championship, right? As most, if not all, high school football teams, that's their goal, is to win the state championship. And for us, that included playing the Friday night after Thanksgiving, which meant we would have to practice Thanksgiving morning. And my first year in high school, like I hated that. Like I had to get up early. We always got that week off from school, and so like it was just dumb. I was frustrated with it. But as I was a junior and senior, it was fun. Like practicing Thanksgiving morning was awesome because one, it meant that we still had a chance to win state, but it was kind of this thing where we were one of like 6 teams still in our division able to practice and play. And so and then growing up, after I got out of high school, stopped playing football, watching NFL games on Thanksgiving Day were awesome. They had throwback jerseys on. It didn't matter how ugly they were or even what sport it is. I love those throwback jerseys. And so watching football games where teams playing in their throwbacks is always fun for me. The second reason I love Thanksgiving is the food. I mean, come on now. Food, I love food. You all know that. Most of you, are laughing at me right now anyways. But and I'm going to say something controversial. Turkey's okay, but it's really not my fave on Thanksgiving. I'm all about those potatoes on Thanksgiving, whether they're mashed or scalloped or sweet potatoes or someone runs down to McDonald's or Dairy Queen and gets some French fries. I'm all about those potatoes on Thanksgiving. Potatoes and stuffing. I love stuffing, especially when it's smothered in gravy. Oh, that's good. I'm so excited for Thanksgiving. Anyways, whatever. I love food. But the last reason, and probably the most important reason why I love Thanksgiving, is because I love sitting around the table with my family and with friends and with people that I love and care about, and I love sharing a meal with them. There's something special, there's something unique that happens when you sit around a table and you're sharing a meal with people, and you're just enjoying yourself. I love it. Well, over the next few weeks as we head into Thanksgiving, we're going to talk about the meals that Jesus had, or the series called Eating with Jesus. And if you didn't know or haven't realized, meals and eating with others is an important part of Jesus's ministry. He saw the dinner table as an opportunity to show value and worth to others, and it was especially for those that they often did not receive affirmation or value outside of Jesus. And so as we get ready for Thanksgiving, as we think about, the meal of Thanksgiving, the other things that we love about Thanksgiving, I want to look at a few examples of meals that Jesus shared with others and try to learn something from them. Try to get a different picture, a different perspective of who Jesus is, and why sharing meals are so important. And so this first week today, whenever you're watching this, I want to look at the story of Jesus filling the disciples' nets in John chapter 21, verses 1 through 14. And for the sake of time, I'm not going to read it all. But let me give us some context before before we really dive into what is happening here. Um, Jesus had just had died on the cross. He resurrected, and we've had a handful of different encounters with Jesus and his followers after getting not arrested, after being resurrected. Um, and in John chapter 21, the disciples are now back in Galilee. They'd been fishing all night, hadn't had any luck. And as the sun is coming up, Jesus, or we know who that it's Jesus. They didn't know that it was Jesus, but Jesus is standing on the shore and yelling out to them, asking them, "Friends, haven't you any fish?" And while this seems like a weird question, what Jesus is essentially asking the disciples here is if they've had breakfast yet. Which, to be honest, who cares? Who cares if they've had breakfast yet? Which I'm sure in their mind they're thinking to themselves, who cares? Who cares if we've had breakfast with? But here's the connection. Here, I want to talk for a minute about that connection between eating breakfast and why it matters. I love breakfast. I'm not a huge breakfast eater. I do every day. In fact, my favorite breakfast food is French toast, and a cafe or a diner or a restaurant's worth as a breakfast place really depends on how their French toast is, and so I love it. Anyways, but when I was in high school, it was even worse. I was terrible at eating breakfast, but my mom cared a lot about us eating breakfast before school. She really didn't even care what we would eat for breakfast, so long as we eat it. I mean, there were days where like I would have leftovers from dinner the night before. She just wanted us to eat because she knew that breakfast was an important part, an important meal for us to have, and it would help us as we went to school. And so that may seem silly. My mom cared about other things. She cared about my grades, about whether or not I was kind or a respectful person. She cared about how I was doing in general in life. But the point is that my mom cared about breakfast because she cares about me. She cared about my well-being, and eating breakfast was a large part of that. And I say that because Jesus asking the disciples if they've had breakfast yet or not is Jesus taking an interest in whether or not the disciples' needs were being met. And so reading through this story, what we see is we see two things from the story. The first is that Jesus cares about our basic needs. And so think for a minute about what the disciples were experiencing. They'd been fishing all night. They were still processing and dealing with all the excitement and tragedy of Jesus' death and resurrection. They're still trying to figure out what their new normal was. And then, on top of all that, someone comes strolling up on the beach, yelling out to them while they're out on their boat, asking if they've eaten breakfast. If it were me, I probably would have been kind of annoyed, a little frustrated, probably would have ignored the question. But it got me thinking that sometimes that as silly or as what it seems to be a silly question that this is, it can be easy to think that why would God care about some of these simple things? Like, isn't there more important things for God to take care of in the world? Things like sometimes I feel silly even like, asking God to help me remember where I left my keys, or when I forget to do something, or I do something a little bit wrong, and I ask God, or tell God like, it would be really cool if this doesn't become a big deal. Like I think to myself like that stuff can't be important to God. Like he's the creator of the universe. There are like bigger things I'm sure on his plate. But I think that even the small things really matter to God. He created us. He knows who we are and what we need. He knows that one of our most basic and important needs is food, and how foundational it is to our survival. Food plays a critical part in our mood and our ability to function. Jesus knew the importance of breakfast and the disciples' need to eat. He knew how important it was for them to have that meal. And so when the disciples tell Jesus that they hadn't gotten any fish yet or hadn't eaten yet, Jesus tells them, throw your net over to the other side of the boat. And they do that. I'm sure like they were kind of rolling their eyes like, bro, we've been out here all night. Like, of course we've thrown it on that side of the boat. But they do it. And after they did it, they caught so much fish that they couldn't even lift the nets onto the boat. Jesus provided for their needs. But we also see that Jesus provides for our hearts in this story. After the disciples came back to shore, Jesus was sitting there cooking up some bread, some fish, making breakfast for them. And he was doing this because not only did he want to meet their basic need of having food, of eating breakfast, he wanted to also spend time with them in order to speak into their lives. You know, when they were out on the water, I'm sure they were discouraged from their lack of success, and that was met by Jesus filling their nets. But he also wanted to counter that discouragement, that frustration that I'm sure they were feeling by giving them peace, by offering them hope. See, he met their physical needs while at the same time meeting the needs of their hearts. And he did it because he loved them. He cared about them. And the cool thing, y'all, is that he loves and cares about us. Loves and cares about you and your needs, both physical and your heart needs being met. And so here's what I want you to think about. Jesus loves and cares about you. He loves and cares about your needs and wants to meet them. But he wants to do that. One of the ways he wants to do that is through providing food and that space for you to share a meal with people. Not only because he wants your physical needs met, but because for Jesus, sharing a meal with people was a way for them to invest, for him to invest in and speak value and worth and affirmation into their lives. And for us, it's an opportunity to do that same thing with those around us, whether it's with people who know and love Jesus or people who don't yet have a relationship with Jesus. And so I want to encourage you that as you share meals with people, especially on Thanksgiving, take that opportunity to not only have your needs met by eating and filling your stomachs with food, but take that opportunity to meet the needs of others, to share the love of Jesus with them, the same love that Jesus shared with his disciples as he sat on that shore cooking them breakfast and meeting their both physical and their heart needs. Well, I hope you guys have a good week, and I'll see you next week for our next midweek moment.